After learning that I was a vampire, my boyfriend tried to kill me. After I escaped, he went to great lengths to lure me back on the night of the full moon, with no fresh blood, no contract. I tossed and turned in agony that he offered his pale, delicate human neck to me, urging in a cold voice, "Honey, just bite. It won't be so uncomfortable." In the moonlight that spilled in from the French windows, illuminating Calvin's fair neck, I licked my lips, touched my elongated teeth with my tongue, and slowly approached his neck. Just as I was eagerly about to sink my teeth in, a calm voice sounded in my ear. The tone was lazy, but it made me feel like I was in hell. "Bella, what are you doing?" In my heart, I thought, "Oh no." Raising my eyes, I met Calvin's eyes, which seemed bottomless, shimmering with a dangerous light under the moonlight. A chill ran down my spine. Having followed Calvin for nearly 2 years, anyone looked at by him with such eyes usually didn't end well. I smiled at him, trying to appease him, wanting to stick out my tongue and lick his neck as usual. The human carotid artery hides just beneath that delicate skin. Calvin was overly sensitive to that area. It took me 2 years to make him drop his guard around me. But now, he quickly dodged backward as I approached, his attractive eyebrows slightly furrowing. His demeanor remained languid. "Bella, your fangs are still out." I froze, quickly retracting my sharp teeth. I covered my mouth as if nothing had happened. As I panicked, he calmly retrieved a wooden sword from under the pillow. I smirked. It's not bad to use an Eastern sword to deal with a Western vampire. He lightly lifted my chin with the tip of the shabby wooden sword he had somehow acquired. For 2 years, I never knew if the one by my side was human. I am not human, I thought in my heart. But I dared not say it out loud. This wooden sword may not kill me, but Calvin's kitchen knife probably could. Seeing me not speaking, his eyes narrowed slightly. The upturned corners of his eyes looked sharp enough to pierce my heart. "So, approaching me was just to use me as a blood bag?" "No, it's not," I shook my head. His gaze was indifferent as he rolled up his right sleeve, revealing 2 small puncture marks. I thought I was cautious enough, but I had been exposed utterly. He moved closer, a dangerous smile on his lips, but icy coldness in his eyes. "Bella, have I ever told you that the thing I hate the most is being used?" His voice was light and cold, colder than the ice coffin I once hid in. And then, I blacked out. In my dream, I saw my mother, who had died at the hands of blood hunters. She gently touched my face, her eyes gleaming with fierceness. "Bella, you must remember, to blend into the human world and rid yourself of the vampire identity, you must form a blood contract to share life force with a human." I eagerly leaned my face into her cold palm, relishing the fleeting warmth. As vampires are often in hiding, my mother had to flee most of the time. I asked, "How can I form a blood contract with a human?" She said, "Use your fangs, bite their neck." I shuddered. "Will they die?" I asked. My mother smiled, "No. But they will share your life and death. As long as they live, you can live. When you die, they die too." I felt conflicted. What if they refuse? My mother's smile faded. "Child, whether they agree or not is insignificant. Your goal is to survive. It's better to find someone who loves you deeply to form a contract, but with different races, humans are often greedy and fickle. True love is hard to come by." My mother's figure faded gradually. I thought I had found the person my mother mentioned. But her warning lingered in my mind. Her last words before she died were still the same, hoping I would live on. So, I decided to form a contract first and explain to Calvin later. If he got angry, I would comfort him. I never planned to use him as a blood bag. I liked him and wanted an eternal bond with him. So, we could be together for a long time, dependent on each other in life and death. Calvin had been very kind to me over the past 2 years. Though he was often unpredictable, he never lost his temper with me. As long as I was honest with him, he wouldn't be angry. But my illusions shattered. Looking into Calvin's ice-cold eyes, I couldn't say a word. He locked me in the basement. Calvin was wealthy, and even the basement was furnished, lit by a warm yellow light, almost cozy, if it weren't for the black, metallic bars implying its purpose as a cage. 4 guards in black stood outside the bars. They changed shifts every 8 hours. I even recognized a few of them, who used to protect me, but were now monitoring me. The clock on the wall had spun 6 times. Since my identity was exposed, I had been imprisoned for 3 days with no visit from Calvin. We had never been apart this long since he brought me home. Even if he was busy, he would come home every day, cooking dinner for me himself. I dreaded sunlight and preferred not to go out during the day. Whenever he traveled, he took me on nighttime flights. I feared strangers, and he never allowed anyone else into the house. Wasn't all this love? But if he loved me, why did he imprison me? Every day, meals were delivered promptly, mostly containing pig's blood and duck's blood. Calvin hadn't been so supportive of my unique taste for blood before. He used to say that consuming too much blood was unhealthy. So, I restrained my appetite and reduced my blood intake. But now, he seemed more generous. He probably figured out my identity. Did he plan to keep me locked up forever? I couldn't understand. My mother never told me what humans would do to a captured vampire. My body suddenly felt feverish. Vampires are cold-blooded creatures, preferring coolness. Fever was not a good sign. I hurried to the bars, frowning, asking one of the guards, "Could you lower the temperature a bit?" "It's too hot in the room." He turned around, hesitant. "Bella, the temperature is set by Calvin and was the one you were most satisfied with before." As I finally saw his face, it was Steve. He used to always be by Calvin's side. 6 months ago, he was assigned to protect me because I loved to go out at night. Steve and I were familiar with each other. "Steve, is it a full moon tonight?" I kept panting, asking difficultly. Steve replied, "I just took over the shift at noon and didn't see the moon. But judging by the date, it should be a full moon today." I slumped to the floor on the night of the full moon. One of the reasons I decided to form a contract that day was to avoid the burning pain of that full moon. Every month on this day, my people would enter ice coffins to resist the heat. This night involved blood, contracts, and my lost love. Another reason was that upon my left hand I moved, there was a ring Calvin had placed there. I had been away from the castle for too long, and the backlash was getting stronger. In the past, I would wait for Calvin to sleep and then secretly bite his wrist. I felt guilty and afraid, so I didn't drink much. I would taste a little and stop. But now, Calvin no longer wanted me. "Steve," I lifted my head, looking at him pleasingly. Though I didn't possess the allure of a succubus, vampires were often fair and had delicate features. When not showing my fangs, I could appear somewhat endearing. Steve looked puzzled, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "Bella, any further instructions?" "Give me your hand," I demanded. He seemed unsure, probably unsure if Calvin had informed him about my identity. Since he was assigned to watch me, Calvin must not want anything to happen to me. "However, if you don't listen to me, I might die now," I insisted. Whether truly threatened by my words or out of sympathy, he hesitated for a moment and then extended his hand. I grinned at him, then quickly composed my face, feigning fierceness. I closed my eyes. I was afraid that if I revealed my fangs, he would retreat. The blood was right in front of me, and I couldn't let it slip away. "Steve, oh Steve, my apologies. You saved me once, and I will surely repay you in future." But before I could open my mouth, a piercing screech was heard from his chest's walkie-talkie. Steve's eyes instantly regained composure and coolness. He opened the walkie-talkie, receiving only a cold command, "Get lost." It was Calvin's voice. Seemingly angry, but how did Calvin know I was about to do something bad? I hadn't recovered from the sorrow of losing fresh blood when I saw a pair of black leather shoes appear before me. Above them were black suit pants and a white shirt, followed by Calvin's exquisitely almost bewitching face. He was usually very particular about cleanliness, never allowing a wrinkle on his suits. But now, there were visible bruises and a barely detectable tiredness in his ice-cold eyes. My head was pounding from the surge of heat. In moments, I couldn't see Calvin's face clearly. I only heard the heavy, dull sound as the iron gate was pushed open. Then, my mouth was filled with the delicious taste of blood. Instinctively, I bared my fangs, succumbing to the hazy consciousness and chaotic memories, consuming without restraint. Later, my instincts drove me to slowly move upwards, licking that familiar forbidden area. Before my teeth even touched the skin, my head was pushed away. There was an inexplicable sense of grievance welling up in my heart. But soon after, I plunged into an even deeper dream. I dreamt of my mother again. The bitterness and fear of these days were completely released at this moment. Tears streamed down from my eyes. In the shallow dream, I seemed to hear someone whispering by my ear. "Bella, Do you want to become a normal person and always accompany me? I seemed to nod. Eventually, my world fell into silence completely. The next day, as I opened my eyes, I saw a ray of sunlight shining into the room from the window, landing on the wooden floor. Although it didn't fall on me, I still subconsciously moved aside. There was a trace of fear in my eyes. Only then did I notice Calvin standing by the bed. He probably saw my movements, and his eyes were unclear. I didn't like the way he looked at me, nor did I like his condescending attitude. Seemingly sensing my dissatisfaction, he bent down, and his palm caressed my face. A smile played on his lips, his eyes as gentle as ever. I felt a slight stir in my heart. I was just about to confide in him like I used to, but his next words completely sank my heart. "Bella, you are ill." His voice was light, like clear snow water, but it struck me hard that he still couldn't accept my identity. He considered my true self as a sickness. "I found a master for you. He's outside. Don't worry, he will help you get treated, to make you look like a normal person." The places he touched tingled. I shrank back, avoiding his hand. His eyebrows furrowed, a hint of displeasure flashing across his face. "What master?" "Calvin wouldn't want to end my life, really bring in a blood hunter. Vampires have disappeared from this world for hundreds of years, leaving behind few legends. Most of the existing claims are probably false. Finding a blood hunter might be even harder than finding a pure-blood vampire." But with Calvin's wealth and resources, my thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a new person. White-robed, with a beard and staff. Wait. Did Calvin invite a Taoist to catch me? But when the Taoist pulled out a broken piece of blood jade from his robe, my hairs practically stood on end. 10 years ago, my parents died because of this object. The Taoist knelt in front of the blood jade plate, but there was no response. It turned out to be a useless plate with dead blood. The Taoist muttered, "As stated in the ancestral book, when this plate is present, the evil will manifest." I looked at Calvin, only to find him staring at me with a curious gaze. Today he could find an irrelevant blood jade plate, but tomorrow he might find a useful one. I had to leave. I activated my blood energy and forced out the wings on my back. "Look, evil has manifested. This plate is showing signs." The Taoist joyfully waved his hands. I snorted coldly, then flapped my wings. It seemed like Calvin, who was used to manipulating everything, was finally showing a crack in his facade. A hint of panic crossed his face. Would someone like him, who was used to controlling everything, feel fear? He lunged towards me, trying to grab hold of me, but I was much faster than him. In the next moment, I flew out of the window. The Taoist's voice became muffled and sluggish. I turned back and saw Calvin grab the Taoist by the neck and throw him to the ground. He stared at me intently, eyes red with hidden anger. Then he jumped out of the window to chase after me. I turned my head and didn't look back. Suddenly remembering the ring on my hand, I took it off, clenched it for a moment, then let it fall down. "Calvin, you deceived me. I don't want you either." Calvin's mansion was in the suburbs, with no other residents nearby. The morning sun was not hot, but the atmosphere was heavy. My head started to feel swollen, and my wings felt increasingly heavy. I do not know how far I flew, but I eventually fell on the ground. Before passing out, I sensed someone approaching. A low and mellow voice sounded, with a hint of joy. "Hey, finally found you here." Then there was a moment of surprise. I didn't catch what was specifically said after. When I woke up again, I found myself lying on a strange bed. The door was pushed open silently. A stranger was holding a glass of red liquid and approaching me. His leather shoes made no sound on the expensive carpet. "Who are you?" I asked, preparing my body for an attack. He seemed to notice my resistance and defense, so he stopped a meter away from me. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "You don't have to fear me. If I wanted to harm you, I would have done it while you were unconscious." He was right. I relaxed a little, but remained cautious. He handed me the glass in his hand. The blood-red liquid shimmered dimly under the faint light. I did not take it. He smiled wryly, then picked up another glass from the table and poured the liquid in. Then, he drank it in one go. "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." His face was open and honest. I was surprised though, as the glass contained some sort of avian blood. I had sensed the bitter grape taste of the blood the moment it came in. Seeing my shock, he adjusted his posture. His sharp teeth protruded from his mouth. His pupils turned dark red. In the next moment, he returned to normal. I'm Allan. As you can see, I am like you. Then, how about you? I gestured around. Here I was, a vampire, feeling betrayed and on the run with nowhere to go, while others had already settled in the human world. Looking at the room's layout, its expensive furnishings, and the high price, he seemed to be doing quite well. Is there such a big gap between vampires? I felt a bit hurt. I am not a pure-blood vampire. My father was human and left me this estate. Allan saw my confusion and explained to me with a smile. I couldn't help but feel touched by his warm smile, which gave off a sense of spring-like comfort, quite different from the cold aura of pure-blood vampires. Is this what offspring of vampires and humans are like? I saved you because we are halfway peers. It's fate that brought us together. You don't need to fear, and I won't ask you anything you don't want to share. Just stay here at ease, as it's very dangerous for you to go out in your current state. Allan left. He was right. Leaving now would not only risk being found by Calvin, but also expose my identity, possibly leading to capture by humans for research. I decided to stay for a while, and once I had a solid plan, I would leave. Then I would find a way to repay Allan for his hospitality. So, I stayed. The room and meals provided by Allan were quite tasteful. However, he was busy and rarely at home. Whenever I saw him, he always seemed rushed and weary. Managing a large estate was indeed different. I felt envious. Despite not having much contact, Allan's sincere and gentle manner left a good impression on me. During a few casual conversations, I learned a thing or two about his parents' past. They were also a human and vampire couple who successfully tied the knot and even conceived a healthy child. But his father passed away early, and his mother followed. Since then, every time I saw him, I felt a bit more sympathy in my heart. Until one evening, I met Allan in the living room. Just as I was about to greet him, his phone rang in his suit pocket. He gave me an apologetic smile, then answered the call. I didn't know what was said on the other end, but Allan's expression slightly changed, his fingertips trembling lightly. A sense of urgency appeared on his brows. He turned around, ready to leave again. Suddenly, his figure froze for a moment, then he turned back to me and asked, "Bella, I need to go to an auction. Would you like to come along?" I was feeling bored staying in that house, so I gladly agreed. The auction house looked like a large castle from the outside. Inside, there were many people, Westerners, as well as Asians. Some individuals were probably special, wearing masks. The auction hadn't started yet, and people of different skin colors were chatting in groups. However, Allan seemed preoccupied, politely turning down several people who tried to engage in conversation, his face showing a hint of seriousness. What was it at this auction that made him so concerned? I had no interest in the human food and drinks. Especially that red wine that looked appealing but tasted like bitter grapes. I was thinking of going out to hunt for food. Unexpectedly, I caught sight of a familiar face. Calvin? How could he be here? I was about to look away when, in the next instant, his dark pupils met mine. I saw the danger in his narrowed eyes. The hand holding the glass seemed to show strained veins. My heart raced, then calmed down. This was not an ordinary occasion. With so many people around, he couldn't just take me away forcibly. Calvin's gaze quickly shifted from me to the nearby Allan. Calvin never liked to show his emotions. But at this moment, his gaze filled with nearly tangible anger scared me. Meanwhile, Allan seemed oblivious, still watching the interior being set up with a serious expression. As if he could see through that black velvet curtain to find what he desired, I followed Calvin's gaze and noticed that Allan had unknowingly raised his sleeves, revealing 2 small holes. They were identical to the ones on Calvin's hands. It wasn't me. It couldn't be me. I'm not capable of such a thing. Though I am a vampire, I have a strong sense of morality. When I saw Calvin with a serious look stepping towards me, I subconsciously wanted to hide, but didn't know where to escape. Suddenly, a deep and ancient bell rang. The auction was starting. People began walking in an orderly fashion towards the inner hall. Even as I sat down, I could still feel a gaze fixed on me. I turned around and saw Calvin's calm, unwavering eyes. His emotions were contained. And I couldn't guess what he was thinking. Do you know Calvin? Allan's voice brought my focus back. His tone towards Calvin carried a distinct sense of wariness. I remained silent. I didn't want to deceive Allan, but I also didn't want to reveal the details of my relationship with Calvin to anyone. He tactfully didn't press further, but instead offered me a piece of advice. Calvin is a dangerous person. I advise you not to associate with him. Why? I couldn't help but ask. He's famous not only in the Chinese community but also in the wealthy circles of Western Europe. Despite his young age, he has a peculiar temperament and ruthless methods. Taking control of such a massive inheritance after his father's death, sometimes I feel like he's a madman disguised as a nobleman. So, is that why he's so averse to me touching his neck? A graceful blonde woman on the stage was introducing the items up for auction while Allan continued to share wealthy family secrets with me. The gaze that had been lingering on me became increasingly difficult to ignore, making me feel uneasy. Allan suddenly chuckled. It's interesting, I've done business with him before, but it's the first time I've seen him pay so much attention to someone. I could only smile awkwardly. After all, we had shared a bed for 2 years. As the auction progressed, and I asked Allan to take a bathroom break, he reluctantly smiled and waited outside for me. Following the scent I had discreetly noted down earlier, I went to see the vampire. I wanted to try, even if I couldn't save her. Entering Calvin's house was a risky endeavor. Who knew if he had found a blood jade plate that could control me now? But before I could locate the vampire, a hand from a nearby passing door pulled me in, and before I could react, I found myself lying on a soft bed. It took a moment before I could make out the person in front of me. Calvin? He turned off the bright light, leaving a dim, amber bedside lamp. His dark pupils were fixed on me, making me uncomfortable. He then raised his hand and slowly unbuttoned the top button of his white shirt. The moonlight from the window outside cast a glow on his delicate, fair jawline, neck, and collarbone. He approached me slowly, straddling me. Who is that man? His tone was cold and restrained, yet the grip on my wrist showed intense emotions bubbling within him. I avoided his hand attempting to touch my face, which triggered his loss of control. He gripped my shoulders with enough force to restrain me beneath him. Bella, why are you being so disobedient? Do you drink anyone's blood? Almost gritting his teeth with concealed grievance. With a cold huff, I retorted, someone was just recently blaming me for treating him as a blood bag. Calvin, get off me. You can't beat me, I added, devoid of humor. A vampire's blood was much stronger and richer than that of a normal human. As much as I tried to free myself from him, his actions were futile. You want to find that vampire, right? I've already sent her back. If you want to see her, come with me. His pale, slender fingers toyed with my hair. His voice was still cold and seductive. But this time, I wasn't going to be fooled again. What do you want to do by buying her? He chuckled lightly. My vampire ran away. Aren't I allowed to buy another one to replace her? Buy her and lock her up again? Humans are truly cruel. Locking eyes with him, I only felt dissatisfaction towards him now. He seemed irritated and then bit my exposed shoulder. Who picked out your dress? It's ugly, he remarked with frustration. Angrily. I pushed him away and headed towards the door, only to find it wouldn't budge. When I turned back, his captivating eyes were fixed on me. Bella, come back with me. Ignoring him, I looked towards the window on the wall. It seemed big enough. I just hoped no one outside would see me. About to summon my wings, I suddenly felt a surge of heat in my body, followed by dizziness and a heavy scent of blood in the air. Turning my head, I saw Calvin's right hand holding a cold, silver blade that was coated with a crimson glow. His left arm bore a bloody wound from elbow to wrist, blood gushing out relentlessly. His eyes were indifferent, as if the flowing blood had nothing to do with him. Having consumed Calvin's blood for 2 years, his blood held a fatal attraction to me, even inducing heat within me. Despite my legs weakening, I knelt on the ground. He smirked with a cold smile, as if saying, I've won the gamble. I'd rather self-harm and bleed than let you go. Allan was right, Calvin truly is a madman. But he's underestimating me. Calvin, a little blood won't keep me here. I stood back up, spreading my wings. Before breaking through the window and flying away, I cast one final glance at him. The once powerful and noble man was now lying on the bed, his lips pallid. Bella, dare to leave and see what happens. He reached out his blood-drenched hand. The pristine bedsheets were stained crimson. Calvin's emotions were complex, a mix of resentment, humiliation, and perhaps even pleading? Was he asking me to save him? Surely he couldn't die, could he? Without looking back. I turned and flew away. When I found Allan, my blood was boiling, and my breath was ragged. He glimpsed confusion in his eyes, but ultimately didn't ask anything, instructing me to hop into the car and signaling the driver to speed up. I opened the window and let the wind blow for nearly half an hour before calming down. Returning to Allan's mansion, I caught a faint, familiar scent in the air. After Allan briefly disappeared and returned with a cup of crimson blood, I accepted it, recalling the holes on his wrist. "So," I asked, "Allan, what's with the blood holes on your hand?" Allan hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Since you've seen them, I'll be honest with you. My mother didn't actually die." "But didn't your father pass away? How can a vampire bound by a contract survive?" Allan's eyes were filled with complex emotions. "It's a long story. I used some special means to barely save my mother's life." Allan didn't say more. Changing the subject, he spoke softly. "I noticed earlier that your complexion didn't look too good. Why don't you go ahead and drink this blood, and then you can have the servant take the cup to be washed later." I looked down at the glass in my hand. The blood inside still vivid. I smiled. "No, thank you." I just smelled an unpleasant scent, couldn't quite stomach it. Allan's expression stiffened. "Unpleasant scent?" A hint of darkness flickered in his eyes. "Yes, something like that, a scent, perhaps?" I replied with a steady smile. The gentle mask on Allan's face began to crack. "Bella, what do you mean by that?" Allan underestimated either the strength of his sedative or overestimated me, a sedative combined with venom for added assurance. The familiar scent I caught in the hallway earlier was from the day I tried to coerce Calvin into a contract in his room. Fortunately, I was prepared and held my breath in time. As for the sedative in the cup, I believe no one can detect if something else has been added to blood better than a vampire. Allan, in the end, seems more like a member of the human race. The mask on Allan's face tore apart completely, revealing the true vampire beneath, as he summoned his black wings and advanced towards me. I dodged backwards, then charged towards him at an even faster speed. Allan couldn't move in time and was knocked to the ground. The wooden floor cracked and shattered in several places. He was about to resist, but I forcefully pinned him down on the floor. A half-blood vampire, raised in a human world greenhouse, how could he be my match? Allan's face showed frustration and even a hint of malice. I controlled the edge of my wing, pressing against his neck. "Tell me, what do you want?" He stopped struggling and instead smirked lightly. "Bella, whether you believe it or not, I genuinely wanted to save you at first, not harm you." Then his eyes turned malevolent. "If your friend hadn't stolen what was mine, I wouldn't have targeted you. After all, your blood wasn't the most compatible." I furrowed my brows. "Are you referring to the vampire that Calvin took away? Do you know her?" "What do you mean by compatible, Bella? You're indeed very curious. But since you can't escape, I can satisfy your curiosity. You wanted to know how my mother survived, right? By exchanging blood with that unfortunate little vampire?" Allan paused. "How did you know? You're intelligent." Allan's gaze shifted towards the void, as if remembering. "My father tragically died. I couldn't save him. Although my mother made a contract with him, she didn't die immediately, as legends say. Instead, her blood evaporated slowly, leading to organ failure. I came up with the blood exchange method. Sadly, it didn't work for me, having half-human blood. So I fed her with blood while trying to capture vampire clans by all means. The one you saw was the fourth and the only one whose blood matched, but at the crucial moment of the heart transplant, she escaped. The situation for vampires today is already difficult, their numbers dwindling. I never expected to be persecuted by one of their own. No wonder that little vampire looked so terrified when she saw us. Who wouldn't fear a life of daily blood drawings and feedings, a living blood bank? And ultimately, she awaited the death where all her organs were taken away. "So, you targeted me instead?" He shook his head. "I tried your blood when you were unconscious. It didn't work. So you wanted to use me for the exchange?" He didn't respond, confirming it. Where did you get the confidence that Calvin would use the vampire he paid a fortune for to exchange with me? I guess I should have had dealings with him earlier than you. The way he looks at you is different. And whether he's interested in the vampire or you, he won't lose. I glanced at him disdainfully. My mother had once said that human methods were cruel and heartless. Now it seemed that evil knows no race. Having severely injured Allan, I kicked him aside and stopped paying attention to him. I then began examining the room. I had lived there for so long, never expecting it to turn into an impenetrable iron cage one day. Allan managed to get up and coughed lightly. You don't need to look further. These materials can't be broken by physical strength, even if you're a pure-blood vampire. I gave up exploring and went back to him. Once again, I positioned the edge of my wing against his neck. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? His gaze sharpened. I never intended to harm you. If our deal goes through, you won't die. But if you kill me, you certainly won't survive. Do you think, with your flesh and blood, you can withstand human firearms? Allan, stop threatening me. Worst case scenario, we'll both die. I have nothing to lose in this world. It's up to you if you value your mother. Allan's face showed a mixture of fear and determination. He then closed his eyes, no longer engaging with me. Seeing his indifferent demeanor, I gave up the verbal argument. What did Allan really want? Did he intend to stay trapped with me forever in this situation? I lay on the bed while he still leaned against the wall. Time passed slowly. The feeling of hunger quickly rose within me. There was nothing in the room, but I had never thought of feeding on Allan's blood. Before, it was a matter of morals, now it was simply repulsive. Not to mention, I wasn't the only one feeling hungry. I lost track of how many days had passed. Allan remained leaning against the wall, and if not for the occasional movement, I might have suspected he was dead. Until a familiar warmth surged within me. Only then did I fully understand Allan's scheme. If sedatives and drugs didn't work, he would use this iron cage to lock me up during my heat period. A vampire's heat period meant losing almost all resistance. My body grew weaker, my vision blurrier. Allan's bloodless face gradually curled into a smirk. He slowly rose and staggered towards me. Bella, I never wanted to harm you. Just be obedient, and I promise you won't be in any danger. I stared at him fiercely. Surrendering or sacrificing others for my own survival was something I couldn't accept. Almost as soon as he entered a meter around me, I aggressively knocked him to the ground. I'd rather drag you to hell with me. Before he could say anything, there was a sudden loud sound of metal being cut outside. Both Allan and I looked stunned. Before I could fully comprehend, there was another deafening crash. Then, the wall collapsed instantly. Within the flying dust, Calvin's tall figure emerged. His face was tense with worry and annoyance, holding a frail and feeble vampire struggling weakly in his hand. Only when he saw me, his eyes flickered with a different light. He seemed relieved, his forehead gradually relaxing, then casually threw the vampire on the ground ahead. Allan, who I had pushed down, found some strength from somewhere and crawled towards the fallen vampire. Mother. He cradled the vampire in his arms. Child, stop hurting others for my sake. The vampire's withered hand touched his face, wiping away his tears gently. Your father has already gone, I can't bear to see you perish. Allan's face twisted with painful yet resolute determination. It's our predestined fate. The scene before me suddenly became blurry. Before fading away, I felt as though I was being embraced by someone cold yet gentle. Hadn't I told you to come with me before? Why aren't you obedient, Bella? 2 years ago, when I first met Calvin, he had said something similar. That day, he was being chased and sought refuge in the forest, where I was hidden among the trees, the moonlight being my best camouflage. I had no interest in the self-destructive nature of humans, much less foolishly risking my life to help. Besides, they now wielded firearms and were no longer the weak human race of centuries past. And often, those rescued may not show gratitude, they might even turn greedy and bite back. Watching that handsome and composed man fend off his pursuers one by one, though he was also seriously injured, fallen in a pool of blood, I initially considered leaving. But a tempting scent of blood piqued my curiosity. I had once asked my mother what kind of people to form contracts with. She told me to find someone whose blood held a special attraction to mine. Having not eaten for several days, I took a large gulp while he was unconscious. Even though taking advantage of his vulnerability made my conscience uneasy, I still saved him, stopped his bleeding, and brought him to safety to avoid the bad guys catching up to him again. After ensuring his safety, I intended to leave. I had considered choosing him for the contract, but the memories of the recent confrontations between the pursuers and him were still fresh. He was a dangerous individual. Little did I know he had already awakened. An alarm rang in my mind, any inkling of suspicion towards my identity, and I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't silence him. I had never taken a life. Both blood hunters and contract-protected vampires were human after all. Humans varied in character, and I didn't want to indiscriminately kill innocents. "Who are you?" He hesitantly asked me, his eyes showing vigilance. That's probably someone who has been in a high position for a long time, clearly lying on the ground looking up at me, still unwilling to admit defeat in terms of momentum. "I am a resident living nearby, and when I saw you lying on the ground and still breathing, I stopped the bleeding for you." I don't know if he believed my words or not, but the fact that I bandaged his wounds and saved his life is undeniable. His vigilance in his eyes decreased by half, with a hint of hesitation added. When my patience was almost running out, he hesitantly spoke up, asking me if I could take care of him for a few days until he fully recovered, promising to reward me handsomely and even offering to sell me this forest. I felt a sense of shame creeping in. But I do not have the identity of a human. How can I take over this forest? But if I don't save him, will it invite his retaliation? So, I brought him to one of my hideouts. When he saw the desolate old house, his eyes couldn't conceal his shock. "Are you an orphan?" I hesitated for a moment, but nodded. During the days, I hunted for food for him, and at night, I secretly sucked his blood as compensation. After all, it seems this hideout may not be suitable. Over the next few days, we got along quite well. However, his gaze towards me became increasingly uneasy. And when he finally recovered, I issued the order for him to leave, pretending generously not to accept his compensation. But he spoke up. "Do you want to come back with me?" What tempted me to nod? Was it the blood on Calvin that had a special attraction to me? Or was it his demeanor of being cautious, suspicious, and in need of love during our time together? Lack of love? Those lacking in love are the most suitable for forming contracts with vampires. Calvin brought me back to his private villa. The villa was eerily quiet. Despite the grandeur of the house, the people in it were scarce, and they rarely spoke unnecessary words. The lighting and decorations were all in cool tones, which suited my taste. Coming into the human world, I made quite a few mistakes. But no matter how many mistakes I made, Calvin never got angry with me. Whatever I wanted or wished to do, he would go to great lengths to fulfill them. Over 2 years, Calvin's indulgence towards me reached its peak. Sometimes, I even wondered if Calvin was treating me like a daughter. It wasn't until we attended a party together that things took a turn. Someone approached us, subtly probing into my identity. I cautiously referred to him as my brother. The smile on the person's face became even more ingratiating. Until Calvin gripped my wrist tightly and pulled me into the car. He then forcefully silenced me with his cool lips before I could even scream. "Brother?" He ground his teeth and his face was filled with anger. I smirked. What followed was a series of tender kisses, drowning in the thick darkness of the night. A few days later, he personally placed a ring on my finger. I had seen the sketch of that ring, hidden in the first drawer on the right side of his desk. It was this ring, and what it symbolized in Calvin's possessiveness towards me, that further fueled my growing blind self-confidence due to his favoritism. Bella. A familiar but softened cold voice called out to me. I opened my eyes to see Calvin's handsome yet disordered face. He was wearing a silk shirt, with 2 buttons undone, revealing his fair neck. The bluish blood vessels beneath his skin were faintly visible. I glanced around and realized we were in the basement where Calvin had kept me imprisoned before. The iron door was securely locked, with 3 heavy iron chains thicker than my wrist adding to the security. Although my head was spinning, I didn't feel any illness. It was him who seemed to be unwell. Why did Calvin lock me up with him? Do rich people like to do this kind of thing? I couldn't fathom the thoughts of humans anymore. He moved closer, and I felt a surge of heat. I tried to push him away, but his hand enveloped mine. He held my hand and pressed it against his neck. The warmth and texture made me want to pull away quickly, but he held on tighter. His face brushed against my fingertips, seeking approval. I ignored him, and the full moon night came. Without fresh blood, without a contract, I was writhing in agony. Yet, he offered his delicate, human-like neck to me, with a seductive voice. "Honey, bite into it. The pain will go away once you do." Struggling to retain some rationality, I turned my head stubbornly. He was shocked at first, then his expression turned into one of embarrassment. But he never let go of my hand. After a moment of hesitation, he sighed and nuzzled his head into my shoulder. It was surprisingly gentle, nothing like what I had expected. Just like his tone at that moment. Previously, I was enchanted by that sorcerer who claimed he could turn you into a normal person, and I mistakenly believed in him. It was my misjudgment, my fault. He raised his head, affection filling his gaze. "I thought I just needed companionship until you left me, but now I realize, I love you, Bella. I love you deeply. I want to be with you forever." Whether it was his pleading love that shook my resolve, or the irresistibly alluring promise of eternal companionship, or my weakening willpower, it was definitely not because I couldn't resist the alluring taste of his blood. In the end, I leaned in and bit into his neck. There seemed to be a shallow and long scar there, and I gently licked it. The next moment, I extended my fangs, avoiding the artery, and pierced his flesh. Before he could let out a muffled groan of pain, he was swallowed back inside. What followed was his almost carefree yet content voice. "Bella, I belong to you. We will be together for eternity." As I opened my eyes, I saw Calvin's still excessively handsome face. His neck was smooth and unblemished, without any signs of blood, not even the scar, but instead, there was an enchanting blood red. Upon closer inspection, intricate patterns could be seen on it. The sunlight fell perfectly on the edge of the bed, indicating it was noon, and this light would not come any closer. This was a lesson I had learned over the 2 years. I reached out to touch something I had always avoided, his bare, long, and pale fingers bathed in the warm sunlight, feeling comfortable without any discomfort. Before my joy could fully express itself on my face, the man in front of me had woken up. Initially, he gently embraced me and gradually tightened his hold, then exposed my bare arms to the cool air. "Don't catch a cold," his hoarse voice carried a hint of laziness and satisfaction. "How did you know about forming a contract?" I asked. "The vampire I captured told me." He pinched my face and seemed reluctant to let go. He then hesitated and gazed into my eyes with intense focus. "How do you plan to treat me? Lock me up again?" Without answering, he held me tighter as if avoiding the question. After a moment of silence, he sighed. "Humans have such short lifespans." I caressed his head, which felt just as soft. "Then cherish your body and strive for a long and healthy life," he added. "Okay, both Bella and I will live to a ripe old age." Suddenly, my ring finger felt cool, as if a ring had been slipped onto it. I reached out to see. It was the ring I had dropped that day.